After 3 years of marriage, my husband and I went for a medical checkup. I discovered that I was finally pregnant. But my husband, he was diagnosed with cancer, and it was already terminal. Knowing that he didn't have much time left, he decided to let go of all restraint. Before the entire family, he pulled his late brother's widow into his arms and kissed her. Then, he turned to his elderly parents and said, "Emma and I have been in love for a long time. Now that I'm dying, this time I choose to live for myself." His pleading eyes fell on me. "Anna, I'll give you all my savings, the house, everything. Please, set me free." Tears welled in my eyes as I picked up the divorce papers he had already prepared. I signed my name. Then, I turned around and tore my pregnancy report into shreds. Chapter 1. I sat on the sofa at my in-laws' house, completely stunned. My husband, Santiago, stood across from me, holding another woman's hand, arguing with his own parents. The woman he was clutching so tightly, the one crying so delicately in his arms, was none other than Emma, his late brother's widow. Santiago's voice was fierce, his emotions running wild as he pulled Emma close and declared, "I'm dying. I won't pretend anymore. Emma and I have loved each other for years. It was my brother who stole her from me. When he died, you refused to let us be together. So I married Anna to please you. But now I'm dying too. And this time, no one can keep us apart." Emma's teary eyes shimmered with devotion, overflowing with tenderness at Santiago's passionate confession. My mother-in-law collapsed against my father-in-law, sobbing uncontrollably. My father-in-law's eyes burned red as he muttered over and over, "What a disgrace! What a disgrace to this family." I sat there, watching these 4 people, each with their own twisted expressions, their own roles in this deception. And suddenly, I understood. Santiago's love for Emma had never been a secret. His parents had known all along. From the very beginning, I was the only one left in the dark. Santiago finally turned to face me, his eyes filled with desperation. "Anna, I'll give you everything, the money, the house. Please, let me go." So, this is what our 3-year marriage meant to him, a shackle. And now, his impending death had finally given him the courage to break free. He no longer had to suppress himself, no longer had to force himself to be with me. Santiago turned to glance at Emma, and the man who had just been crying uncontrollably moments ago swiftly pulled out a divorce agreement from his bag and placed it in front of me. Finally, he was willing to let go of Emma's hand. He knelt in front of me and shoved a pen into my hand, his eagerness undeniable, as if the moment I showed even the slightest hesitation, he would grab my hand himself and sign my name on the divorce papers. Tears filled my eyes as I looked at Santiago, the man I had loved for so many years. With my voice trembling, I finally asked the question that had haunted me all along. "Santiago, have you ever loved me?" The man kneeling before me paused, his gaze locking onto mine. My best friend always used to joke that Santiago's eyes were so affectionate that even when he looked at a dog, it seemed like love. Now, I finally believed it. After a moment, Santiago spoke. "If I had a few more years, Anna, I think I would have fallen in love with you. But I don't have time anymore. Before I die, I just want to be with the person I love now. Please, sign it." I closed my eyes, for silent tears rolled down my cheeks. Now I had my answer, and since this was what he truly wanted, I would grant him his wish. I picked up the pen and carefully wrote my name, stroke by stroke, on the divorce agreement. As my pen touched the paper, for a brief moment, I could have sworn I felt Santiago's breath hitch. But just as I lifted my gaze to look at him with one last shred of hope, he pushed the divorce papers closer to my hand. As if sealing his decision, I no longer hesitated. With one final stroke, I swiftly finished writing my name, and just like that, I put an end to my years of foolish love. As soon as Santiago saw my signature on the divorce papers, he let out a breath of relief. Yet, for a brief moment, a hint of sadness flickered across his face. But it didn't last long. In the very next second, he turned away and threw himself into Emma's arms, where she was already crying tears of joy. I picked up my bag, ignoring the desperate pleas of my mother-in-law, the same woman who once swore that she loved me like her own daughter. I walked out of the house that had become my prison. The heavy security door slammed shut behind me, sealing away the shouts of my mother-in-law, the angry curses of my father-in-law, and the choked sobs of Santiago and Emma as they celebrated their reunion. I pressed a hand against my stomach, where my child had yet to show. A wave of heartache and sorrow crashed over me, like two sharp blades, slicing through my already shattered heart. Chapter 2. This child, the one I had waited for 3 years to conceive, the one who had arrived so late. And yet, now that he was finally here, his parents were about to divorce. I reached into my bag, pulling out the medical report that the clinic had sent to me earlier this morning. All I could do was laugh bitterly at fate's cruel joke. Santiago was sick, but it wasn't the terminal cancer he thought it was. Perhaps one day, when he finally learns the truth, he will regret everything he did today. But by then, it will be too late. As I descended the stairs, I shredded the report in my hands. By the time I reached the ground floor, the once pristine document had been torn into hundreds of tiny pieces, as if it had been fed through a shredder. Impossible to piece back together, just like my love for Santiago, which had been completely destroyed, and could never be put back together again. Without hesitation, I threw the medical report into the trash. For one last time, I glanced in the direction of my mother-in-law's house upstairs. Then, I turned around and walked away. I returned to the home Santiago and I once shared. As I stood in the familiar space, looking at every decoration, every little detail, I had thought that I had already given up on him, that I wouldn't feel pain anymore. But the moment I blinked, tears betrayed me, sliding silently down my cheeks. I had truly loved Santiago. We had known each other since we were children. He was always the brightest, most dazzling boy among us. Then, when my father was transferred for work, our entire family had to move away. The hardest part of leaving wasn't the house, the city, or the school. It was leaving Santiago behind. I still remembered that young boy, riding his bicycle, chasing after our moving truck, pedaling for miles, refusing to stop. That memory had always stayed with me. It was the only reason I decided to come back. I chose to attend university here, to reunite with Santiago, to accept my parents' wishes, to date him, to marry him, to spend the rest of my life with the boy I had loved since childhood. I thought that was the best fate life could offer me, but I never realized that his love had already changed long ago. During the years I was gone, Santiago had fallen in love with someone else. Marrying me had been nothing more than his second choice. I leaned back against the sofa, my hand resting gently on my stomach. As memories of my years with Santiago flooded my mind, the door suddenly swung open. Santiago walked in hand with Emma, dragging a suitcase behind him. He had assumed that my pride wouldn't allow me to return to this house. So when he saw me sitting on the sofa, he froze for a moment, visibly caught off guard. A trace of awkwardness flickered across his face as he spoke. I thought you wouldn't be here. Emma isn't comfortable staying at my parents' place, so I brought her back here. She can stay in the guest room, though the divorce agreement stated that the house belonged to me. We had yet to finalize the divorce, until the divorce certificate was in my hands. This was still Santiago's home, and whoever he wanted to bring into it was his choice. From the guest room, I could hear laughter. Santiago and Emma's voices carried through the door, their joy cutting into me like a knife. I rose to my feet, walked into the master bedroom, and shut the door tightly behind me. Leaning against the window seat, I gazed out at the city sea of lights, wondering, where would I go from here? How should I start over? I had no idea how much time had passed. Suddenly, there was a knock at my bedroom door. Then, Santiago's voice. I made dinner. Do you want to come out and have some? 3 years of marriage, and I had never once eaten a meal cooked by Santiago. Yet now, as we were about to divorce, I was finally being offered one. But this meal was carefully prepared by my husband for another woman. Maybe I had been silent for too long. Santiago must have thought I was refusing him. Just as he was about to walk away, I suddenly stood up. For a moment, his face showed surprise. I brushed past him, my voice calm and indifferent. Didn't you say we were eating? Why are you standing there? I still hadn't decided whether I would keep this child or not. But thinking about it, this was the first, and maybe the last, time this child would ever taste food made by their father. Suddenly, I wanted to try it on their behalf. Maybe I didn't deserve to eat the meal Santiago had prepared with such care. But this child did. Chapter 3. The atmosphere at the dining table was strangely awkward. Santiago kept serving food to Emma. His gestures so intimate. It was hard to believe that these two had once been brother-in-law and sister-in-law. After 3 years of marriage, I had never imagined that they were in love. Perhaps I had been staring at them for too long. Santiago's hand, which had been picking up food for Emma, hesitated for a moment. The steamed shrimp he was about to place in Emma's bowl changed direction and landed in mine instead. Anna, hurry and try my cooking, Santiago said enthusiastically. I stared down at the perfectly cooked shrimp. Its color, aroma, and presentation flawless. But I couldn't bring myself to look up. Santiago, who was still eagerly urging me to eat, had already forgotten. I had been allergic to shrimp since childhood. When we were younger, Santiago was always extra cautious, guarding me like a watchdog. Even the snacks I ate, he would carefully inspect the ingredient list, making sure there wasn't even a trace of shrimp in them. But now, the Santiago who had once protected me so carefully was gone. The only thing he could see now was Emma, the woman he claimed to love with all his heart. And for me, he no longer had even an ounce of concern left to spare. At that moment, a realization hit me. The Santiago I once cherished was dead, rotting away in the dirt, decaying in silence. Yet I had still been clinging to the memory of him, longing for the boy he used to be. I ate my dinner quietly, never once touching the shrimp. After the meal, Santiago busied himself, cleaning the table and washing the dishes. Emma, meanwhile, sat down across from me, holding a cup of tea, smiling sweetly. In a soft voice, she whispered, "Stolen things never last. Santiago has only ever loved me." Her eyes sparkled with amusement, filled with nothing but joy and satisfaction. Not even a hint of sorrow for the fact that her so-called beloved Santiago was dying. I couldn't help but ask, "Santiago is going to die. Doesn't that make you sad?" She arched a brow, then smiled. "From now on, I will cherish every day as if it were a lifetime. You wouldn't understand the satisfaction of being with someone who truly loves you." As Santiago stepped out of the kitchen, she instantly melted into his arms, whispering sweet nothings, clinging to him like ivy. I turned away, not sparing them another glance, heading straight for my bedroom. But just as I closed the door, I realized something. These two, they couldn't even wait. They hadn't even gotten divorced yet, and they were already rolling around in bed in my home, the home I shared with Santiago. Their shameless moans were so loud that even two closed doors couldn't block them out. Unable to sleep, I got up, went to the bathroom, and filled a basin with ice-cold water. Then, I stormed into the guest room and drenched the two naked animals lying tangled on the bed. The two, who had been lost in their passion just moments ago, screamed in shock as I barged in. Emma curled into Santiago's arms, water still dripping from her temples. Gone was the smug arrogance she had just displayed before me. Santiago, his hair and face soaked, roared in fury, "Anna, are you crazy?" I tossed the empty basin onto the bed, right on top of their disgusting, entwined bodies, and sneered, "Santiago, I think you're the crazy one. We're still legally married. If you're so desperate to screw someone, go to a hotel. Go to your mother's house. Hell, go do it out in the open field for all I care. But don't you dare disgust me in my home." When Santiago first asked for a divorce, I had only felt heartbroken. But for him to so openly bring his mistress into our home, to completely disregard my presence under the same roof, to shamelessly roll into our marital bed with her, it filled me with pure rage. I took a deep breath, steadied my emotions, and looked at Santiago coldly. "I may have signed the divorce papers, but if you push me too far, if I refuse to show up on the day of the official divorce, your little dream of being with her will shatter into pieces." I took a step forward, my tone dropping into a deadly whisper. "Don't test me, Santiago. If you force my hand, I'll hold on to my title as your wife until the day you die. And when you're gone, let's see how your precious Emma enjoys living in the shadows, forever your brother's widow." Santiago's anger exploded instantly. His body tensed, and he looked like he was about to jump out of bed to confront me. But before he could move, Emma's face suddenly changed. Chapter 4. My thinly veiled threat made Santiago freeze for a moment, clearly caught off guard. He probably never expected that the once obedient, gentle girl who relied on him completely would one day speak to him with such sharpness and disdain. After a brief silence, the humiliation of losing face in front of me made Santiago even angrier. He looked ready to jump out of bed to argue with me. But Emma's expression had changed. She suddenly clung to Santiago's arm and whispered urgently, "Santiago, don't provoke her. What if she really refuses to divorce you? What will happen to me then? Mom and Dad are already mad at me. I can't lose you too." Then she buried her face in his arm, sobbing softly and pitifully. Almost instantly, Santiago's anger disappeared. His arms wrapped around Emma as he comforted her gently, and at the same time, he turned to me and asked in a low, controlled voice, "What do you want?" Watching them put on their disgusting little act, I suddenly felt nauseous. I fought back the urge to vomit and forced my voice to remain steady. "If you two want a smooth divorce, then do me a favor, stop flaunting your disgusting relationship in front of me. Even if you gave me all your assets, don't tell me you can't afford to rent a place." I paused for a moment, then added coldly, "Or better yet, why don't you just move out together?" The tenderness Santiago had just shown toward Emma evaporated instantly. My words rekindled his anger, burning hotter than before. But when he saw the unyielding expression on my face, something inside him wavered. His jaw clenched, and for the first time, his anger carried a hint of bitterness. Finally, in a deep voice, he spat out, "You're the one forcing me to leave. Anna, don't regret this." I didn't hesitate. I turned around and walked away, ignoring Santiago's pathetic attempt at a threat. If there was one thing I regretted most in my life, it was leaving my parents to marry him. Back in the master bedroom, I finally lay down on the bed. The world had finally fallen silent. No more disgusting noises from the other room. And yet, I couldn't sleep at all. The next morning, Santiago quickly sent Emma away. Maybe my fierce outburst last night had scared him. When Santiago left with Emma in a hurry, his retreating figure almost seemed like he was fleeing in panic. But what I didn't expect was that he would rent an apartment for Emma in the next building over. And what surprised me even more was that, despite having so little time left, despite supposedly cherishing every last moment with the woman he loved, he kept coming back. In the middle of the night, quietly. He never went to the master bedroom. He would simply sleep on the couch, barely making it through the night, and then leave before dawn. Santiago thought I didn't notice, but he didn't know that because of my pregnancy nausea, I often woke up in the middle of the night to vomit. I had been aware of his late-night visits for a long time, but I didn't care why he was acting so strangely. I didn't even care why he kept coming back, because none of it mattered anymore. What truly troubled me was the decision about this child. If I kept the baby, my life would remain entangled with Santiago and Emma forever. Because once Santiago learned the truth, he would never give up on this child. But the thought of ending this pregnancy, of personally destroying the life growing inside me, this was my child, my own flesh and blood. Could I really bear to let them go? Was this really my fate? To remain entangled with those two for the rest of my life? Every time I thought about Santiago and Emma, the chaotic scene from that night would resurface in my mind. The moment I stormed into the guest room, water basin in hand, ready to shatter their illusion, Santiago, still soaked and furious, had completely missed it. That fleeting moment when fear flashed across Emma's face as I said I wouldn't divorce him. But I had been watching her closely. I noticed it. Why was she so desperate for me to divorce Santiago? Was it really just because she wanted to spend the last few months of his life with him? Or was there something more? Chapter 5. But I still had time. Time to hesitate. Time to waver. Time to figure out what I truly wanted. I went to the hospital for my scheduled prenatal checkup, and unexpectedly saw Emma. She was smiling sweetly, walking toward the hospital garden with a young nurse by her side. There was something intimate about the way they leaned toward each other, speaking in hushed tones. My hand hovered over the elevator button. Then, without thinking, I turned and followed them, hiding behind a tree. I listened in. Emma's voice was practically dripping with excitement, her joy impossible to conceal. "Alice, you've really helped me out this time. You just started working at the hospital, and I'm already dragging you into this mess. I feel terrible." The young nurse lowered her voice, sounding nervous. "I was scared to death. I hid my brother-in-law's real medical report. Are you sure no one noticed the fake one you made?" Emma quickly shook her head, grinning ear to ear. No. Santiago already asked for a divorce. Once we get married, I'll bring him back for another checkup and tell him it was just a misdiagnosis. I'll convince him not to sue the hospital, and even if he does, he won't be able to trace it back to you. So this was the truth. There was never a misdiagnosis. Emma had faked everything, all to force Santiago to leave me. I wonder how he'll feel when he finds out that his beloved Emma had carefully orchestrated this entire deception, just so she could claim him for herself. Would he feel betrayed? Or would his love for her blind him to the truth? But at this moment, I wasn't thinking about how Santiago would react. Instead, I felt an unexpected wave of gratitude toward Emma. If it weren't for her selfishness, I might still be trapped in the illusion Santiago had created for me, still believing I had a perfect husband, still drowning in a fantasy I refused to wake up from. Emma's manipulation had revealed the truth, that Santiago had never truly loved me. At this moment, I didn't know whether to hate her or thank her, but I wondered, once they got retested, would Santiago and his beloved sister-in-law be able to accept the real results? Chapter 6. I turned away, no longer interested in listening to their conversation, and walked back into the hospital. After taking a queue number, I headed straight into the doctor's office. The moment the doctor saw me, he greeted me with familiarity. "Your husband didn't come with you again? A child this precious, you should both be paying close attention." I sat down across from him, hesitating for a moment before gathering the courage to speak. "Doctor, I'd like to ask about the procedure for an abortion." The seasoned professor, who had just been speaking casually, suddenly widened his eyes in shock. When I walked out of the doctor's office, I immediately saw Emma standing there, her face twisted with an ominous expression. Before I could react, she snatched the medical report from my hands. Her gaze fell on the ultrasound results, where it clearly stated early pregnancy, 10 weeks. The gentle, ever-smiling expression she usually wore was now twisted into something terrifying, something monstrous. Her face contorted in panic. She grabbed my wrist tightly and demanded, "You're pregnant. Are you still going to divorce Santiago?" I shook her hand off and laughed. "Whether I divorce or not, that's between me and Santiago. I don't need to report to you, dear ex-sister-in-law." I took a step back, instinctively protecting my stomach, while watching Emma, who looked on the verge of madness. Then, with deliberate provocation, I added, "Why don't you ask Santiago yourself? Maybe, once he finds out I'm pregnant, he won't want a divorce anymore." I smiled. "I'll even take Santiago for another checkup. Who knows? Maybe his diagnosis was a mistake. That would be a real double blessing for our family, wouldn't it?" I walked straight past her, but after a few steps, I suddenly stopped and said, "If you truly want to be with Santiago, then you better pray I keep this secret forever, and that he never finds out the truth." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked away. What I didn't see was the flash of hatred that crossed Emma's face. Chapter 7. Santiago's parents had called me several times, asking me to visit them. Each time, I refused. I knew exactly why they wanted to see me, to persuade me not to divorce Santiago. But he was the one who wanted the divorce, not me. Then, one day, his mother called again. Her voice was thick with tears, her emotions spilling through the phone. "Anna, your father-in-law fell ill from stress. He keeps saying he wants to see you. Even if you and Santiago separate, we will always see you as our own daughter. Please, my child, Just come back and visit us. A woman who once prided herself on her high status, now humbling herself to beg me, even though I still refused over the phone. After I hung up, I couldn't help but soften. After all, they were the uncle and aunt who watched me grow up. They had been my father-in-law and mother-in-law for 3 years. And more than that, they were my unborn child's grandparents. Thinking about how sick they were, I decided to bring some nutritional supplements as a gift and visit them. But when I arrived at their home's doorstep, I suddenly remembered. I had already returned my house key to Santiago. Just as I was about to knock, I heard my father-in-law's voice from inside the room. Your mother and I have been covering for you and your sister-in-law for all these years. Why must you insist on divorcing Anna now? Marrying her never stopped you from being with Emma. Santiago responded impatiently. The divorce papers are already signed. It's too late to regret it. Stop bringing this up the moment I walk in, I'm already dying. Can't you just leave me alone? My father-in-law let out a heavy sigh and continued. Santiago, now that you're sick, this is precisely why you shouldn't be divorcing Anna. You need to hurry up and give our family an heir. Your brother is already gone. And now only you are left. Whether it's Anna or Emma, as long as one of them gets pregnant, that's all that matters. But if you insist on this divorce, what about my grandson? Chapter 8. I looked down at the nutritional supplements in my hand and let out a self-mocking laugh. My mother-in-law had told me that my father-in-law was sick from stress. But he seemed perfectly clear-headed to me, clear-headed enough to still be thinking about me bearing his precious grandson. So this was the so-called love and care of my father-in-law and mother-in-law. So this was the uncle and aunt who had watched me grow up. They knew all along that their younger son was sleeping with his brother's widow. And instead of stopping them, their first instinct was to cover it up. And now, they had the audacity to ask me to bear a child for their family's bloodline? I gently placed a hand over my stomach. And in my heart, I silently whispered an apology to the little life inside me. The question that had tormented me for half a month was finally resolved in an instant. Santiago's rotten bloodline should never be passed down. For once, fate had been merciful. I didn't enter the house. I turned around, walked downstairs, and threw the supplements into the trash. Then, I pulled out my phone and called my doctor. After a brief conversation, I scheduled the abortion. This time, I never looked back. Santiago, the child, I was letting them both go. When I got home, I hesitated for a moment, then finally dialed my mother's number. Almost instantly, the call was answered. The moment I heard that familiar, warm voice on the other end, I couldn't hold back my tears, hearing my soft sobs. My mother's voice turned immediately anxious. Sweetheart, tell mommy what's wrong. Don't cry. Don't make mommy and daddy worry. Before my mother could finish speaking, my father's voice came through the phone as well. My precious girl, tell daddy, was it that little bastard Santiago who bullied you? Just wait. I'm calling his father right now. I'll see how he explains raising a son who dares to mistreat my daughter. I clenched my phone tightly, forcing myself to speak in a calm and steady voice. Dad, Mom, don't contact anyone from his family. Please. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. I'm just divorcing Santiago. Dad. Mom, I want to come home. Chapter 9. I stayed on the phone with my parents until late at night. Eventually, my furious father calmed down, and he reluctantly agreed not to cause trouble for Santiago's family, at least for now. Originally, they wanted to drive through the night to get to me, but after a long round of coaxing, I finally convinced them to wait until morning. After hanging up, I felt a rare sense of peace. I still had my parents. I still had people who loved me. And for the first time in a long while, I fell asleep quickly. I thought that Santiago wouldn't come back tonight. I never expected that not only would he come back, but that he would crawl into my bed. At some point, I felt a weight pressing down on me. Soft, warm lips brushed against my forehead. The prickle of his stubble against my skin woke me instantly. The familiar sense surrounding me left no doubt. I knew exactly who was on top of me. Santiago. He lowered his head, attempting to kiss me again, but I fought back fiercely, struggling against him. Santiago whispered, "Didn't you love me the most? Give me a child." The moment those words left his mouth, My stomach churned with disgust. I thought of everything I had heard at his parents' house. I thought of how, just moments ago, he had probably whispered the same words to Emma. And suddenly, I felt like I was going to vomit. I used all my strength to push Santiago away, collapsing onto the edge of the bed as I dry heaved. Santiago stood nearby, his clothes disheveled, watching me with a stunned expression. For once, that cold, indifferent face of his showed a flicker of pain. His voice carried an unexpected trace of hurt as he asked, "Does being intimate with me really make you this sick?" I gagged, trying to suppress the nausea. Then, lifting my head, I looked at Santiago's face, a face I once couldn't get enough of. But now, even looking at him disgusted me. Maybe the revulsion in my eyes was too obvious. Because Santiago stiffened, then turned away in embarrassment, slamming the bedroom door hard as he left. He walked out without looking back. And because of that, he didn't see the figure stepping out from the fire escape. He didn't see that after he took the elevator downstairs. Someone unlocked the door to my apartment, and I, still bent over the bed, retching, had no idea that someone had just poured an entire bottle of cooking oil all over my floor. Chapter 10. The next morning, I woke up early. Today was the day of my scheduled abortion. I also knew that my parents might be arriving soon. If they found out about the pregnancy, things would only get more complicated. I had to get the procedure done before they came. After Santiago's disruptions last night, I had barely slept at all, with my mind foggy from exhaustion. I slung my bag over my shoulder and prepared to leave. But just as I reached the shoe cabinet, my foot suddenly slipped. I stepped on something slick without warning, and before I could react, I crashed to the ground. There was nothing to protect me as my waist and abdomen slammed onto the ground. A sharp, searing pain tore through my lower belly, and a warm, unstoppable flow gushed between my legs. The agony was overwhelming. I felt myself on the verge of blacking out. With trembling hands, I fumbled for my phone and instinctively dialed Santiago's number. Curled up on the floor, body racked with pain, I kept whispering to myself that Santiago was just in the next building, that he would come soon, that he would save me and our child. I had already decided to get an abortion. I had told myself 1,000 times that this child wasn't meant to be. I had prepared myself mentally over and over again. But losing my baby like this, in this cruel, unexpected way, no matter what I had told myself, I could feel life slipping away from inside me. And in that moment, the pain in my heart was far worse than the pain in my body. I dialed Santiago's number over and over again. My blood pooled beneath me, spreading across the floor. The ringtone echoed through the silence, again and again, but no one answered. At that very moment, Santiago was in bed with Emma, trying to create another child, and he had no idea that he had just lost the only chance to save his first one. Chapter 11. When I woke up again, I was in the hospital. The first thing I saw was my parents' anxious faces. The moment my mother saw me wake up, her already swollen eyes filled with fresh tears. She cupped my pale face, a face drained of blood, and sobbed, "Sweetheart, you scared mommy to death. My precious girl, you've suffered so much." My father gritted his teeth, holding back the tears that threatened to fall. He turned his head away, not wanting to show weakness in front of his daughter. With a deep, steady voice, he said, "If this is how they treated my daughter, I will never forgive Santiago." I reached out and gently shook his clenched fist, just like I used to when I was a child. Finally, my father's anger subsided, and he held my hand. With a weak voice, I asked, "What about the baby?" My mother's tears flowed even harder. And my father, voice thick with emotion, choked out, "By the time we got to your home, you were lying in a pool of blood. When we brought you to the hospital, the baby was already gone." I had already expected this. There was no way the baby could have survived. I nodded slightly and said, "Dad, can you ask the doctor what happened to the baby? If they haven't handled it yet, bring them back to me." Not long after, my father returned, holding a small bottle of formalin. I reached out to take it, but my father hesitated and said, "Don't look, it'll only break your heart." I stubbornly extended my hands, Seeing my determination, my father reluctantly placed the bottle into my palms. Inside, the tiny fetus, barely 6 or 7 centimeters long, curled in the transparent liquid. Such a small, fragile life. Tears streamed down my face before I even realized it. I held the bottle close to my chest and silently whispered, "My sweet baby, come find me in your next life. This time, I promise, I will choose a father who truly deserves you." I asked my mother to find a beautiful box to place them inside. Chapter 12. My mother suggested softly, "Let's find a peaceful place with good feng shui and bury the baby there." But I shook my head. Instead, I turned to my father and said, "Dad, can you hire a cleaner to tidy up my place? And while you're there, please bring me my laptop from the master bedroom. There's something important inside that house." Once the divorce was finalized, I was going to sell it. I never wanted to step foot in it again, because if I went back, I would remember lying in a pool of blood. I would remember feeling my child being torn from my body. I would remember the helplessness, the despair. During my entire hospital stay, Santiago never called me, not once. I doubted he had even gone home. If he had, he would have seen the blood, and he would have wondered what happened to me. When my father returned with my laptop, he confirmed the house was exactly the same. No one had been back. But when I opened my laptop and checked the home security cameras, I saw something unexpected. Santiago wasn't the only one who had ignored that house. That night, a little rat had snuck inside. She was the real murderer of my child. At that exact moment, Santiago was helping Emma try on wedding dresses. Emma stood before the mirror, wrapped in white silk, her face glowing with joy. These past few days, Santiago hadn't snuck out at night. He ignored all of Anna's calls. Just a few more days, and he would have his divorce papers. Then he could marry Emma. Emma had hoped for a different outcome. She had prayed for news that Anna and her unborn child had both died. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. She had snuck into Anna's home late at night, and though she hadn't witnessed the tragedy itself, she had seen the blood. That much blood meant only one thing. The baby was gone, and without that child, Anna stood no chance against her. Emma gazed at her reflection in the mirror, admiring her own beauty as she thought to herself. Chapter 13. On the day of the divorce, Santiago was already waiting early in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Beside him, wearing a delicate wedding veil, stood Emma. By noon, Santiago had already called me multiple times to urge me to arrive. Finally, with my parents by my side, I showed up, wrapped up tightly from head to toe. Santiago's face froze for a moment when he saw my appearance. Just as he was about to ask what had happened, my father stepped forward, pushed him away from me, and helped me sit down in front of the staff member. Santiago leaned in, attempting to call out, "Dad," but before he could finish, my father cut him off with a sharp wave of his hand. "I don't deserve to be called your father. Today, we're here for the divorce. Once this is done, our families will have nothing to do with each other ever again." My in-laws, who had just rushed over, froze in place upon hearing those words. Too afraid to step forward and intervene, the divorce certificate was processed swiftly and handed to me. Seeing everything finally settled, I let out a deep breath of relief. Yet, I did not leave immediately. With my parents supporting me, I sat down nearby and watched as Santiago, with Emma clinging to his arm, turned around and walked straight to the marriage registration window. The staff at the Civil Affairs Bureau were visibly shocked. No one had expected a divorce and remarriage to happen seamlessly in the same breath. My in-laws, upon seeing that I had already signed the divorce papers, no longer bothered to stop Santiago and Emma from registering their marriage. I sat silently to the side, watching. Santiago and Emma happily received their marriage certificate. But as they turned around, they froze, because I was still there. Hand in hand, they walked over to my former in-laws. I watched as the four of them stood together, a perfect little family. Calmly, I reached into my mother's bag and pulled out an exquisite box. Holding it gently, I walked straight to Santiago and said, "We've known each other for a long time. Consider this my wedding gift to you. You can open it now, your parents can look too." Chapter 14. Santiago hesitated for a moment, then opened the box. On top, he found a medical report. He picked it up, confused. It was his own report, and it said he never had cancer. The hospital misdiagnosed him. A wave of joy swept through his entire family. The four of them cheered, overwhelmed with happiness. But I remained seated, watching their little celebration with my parents beside me. Santiago eagerly flipped through the documents. But then, his smile vanished. Beside him, Emma snatched the report from his hands. Her eyes widened in panic as she screamed, "This must be a mistake. How could Santiago have azoospermia? Anna was pregnant, wasn't she?" As soon as the words left her mouth, she slapped a hand over her lips, realizing her mistake. But Santiago heard everything. His face drained of color. He turned to me, gripping the box in his hands, his voice shaking with emotion. "Is it true? Were you really pregnant?" I nodded. Behind him, my former in-laws rushed forward, their smiles returning. Santiago shoved the box into his mother's hands, his voice choked with emotion. "I will treat you both well. Everything before was my fault. I regretted it a long time ago, but I was too proud to ask for your forgiveness. From now on, let's live together as a happy family. Let's go and remarry right now." I avoided his outstretched hand and smiled. "But we haven't finished looking at the gifts yet. Don't you want to continue? Right now." Santiago was hanging on to my every word. Obedient and eager, he quickly retrieved the gift box from his mother's hands. One by one, he flipped through my prenatal examination records. With each page he turned, his smile grew wider, until he reached the last item in the box. A small bottle. Inside, something fleshy and pale floated in a transparent liquid. Santiago picked it up, his expression full of confusion, and asked, "What's this? Some kind of medicinal tonic?" I smiled, a cold, merciless smile, and in a soft voice, I said, "Oh, that's your child. How could you, as his father, not recognize him? Take a good look. The doctor said that with your condition, your chances of fathering a child were 1 in 10,000, so this might have been the only descendant you'll ever have in your lifetime." Chapter 15. Santiago's smile froze. The color drained from his face, leaving him as pale as a ghost. His hand trembled as he held the bottle. From behind him, his parents wailed in horror and despair. Tears welled up in Santiago's eyes, his voice filled with shock and anger as he demanded, "How could you be so cruel? You actually aborted our child? You killed our baby. That was your child too." I waved my hand dismissively and said, "Santiago, you're blaming me unfairly. I was planning to get rid of the baby, but I never had the chance. If you want to know how I miscarried, you should ask your lovely new wife." "Who, exactly, poured an entire bottle of oil all over my living room floor?" Santiago stood frozen, but his mother didn't. Before anyone could react, she lunged at Emma, clawing and slapping at her. Emma, who had been trying to slip away quietly, suddenly found herself cornered by Santiago's furious parents. They rained down blows on her. Screaming in rage, Emma wailed, her voice shrill and desperate. "Santiago, she's lying. It wasn't me. I swear. Santiago, help me." But Santiago didn't move. It was as if he hadn't heard her cries at all. His eyes were locked on me, his voice hoarse. He asked, "I was the father. You should have told me." I shrugged, spreading my hands. My voice was mockingly casual. "Oh, but I did. I called you 10 times? 20? But you never picked up. You were the one who gave up the chance to save your own child." Santiago's knees buckled. Slowly, he collapsed to the ground. His one straight spine now curved under an unbearable weight. His handsome face, once so proud and untouchable, was now covered in tears. This defeated, shattered version of Santiago was someone I had never seen before. With my parents by my side, I walked to the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. At the same time, the police arrived. I handed them a USB drive containing the security footage from my home, along with other evidence. Emma, still being beaten by Santiago's parents, suddenly realized the storm of fists and curses had stopped. Dazed, hair disheveled, she looked up and saw a pair of police officers standing over her. Before she could even process what was happening, a pair of cold handcuffs snapped onto her wrists. Then, she finally understood. Panic set in. Her voice became shrill, hysterical. "What are you doing? It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Santiago. Santiago. Help me. I'm your wife. We just got married." Santiago, who had been curled on the ground, sobbing, suddenly leapt to his feet. He rushed toward her. Anne slapped her hard, although the police quickly pulled us apart. Emma's lip had already split open from the impact. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. And for the first time, she was too stunned to say a word. Even as she was dragged into the police car, she remained silent. My parents helped me into the car. And today, the three of us would finally leave this place. As the engine roared to life, I gazed at the familiar scenery outside the window. From this moment on, I knew I would never return. At that moment, Santiago finally realized everything. Just like when he was 16, he ran after the car, crying out my name. But now, I am 26, and this time, Anna will never look back again. For the rest of my life, I only wish to live freely, to fulfill my own dreams, and to spend each year in peace.